This screencast demonstrates how to record scores with the performance grader for the kindergarten math assessments. Here's our example tracker. You can see there's already been some assessment work done with the represent standard. And let's pretend that today it's time to do assessments with patterns. So patterns is in this column. And recall that when I do the drop-down menu, I can access the student pages through the resource bins, and I access the teacher pages and the actual assessment platform through Assess. So I click on Assess, and this little mini tracker appears. This little mini tracker is just for looking at the history of the tries or attempts on the patterns standard. So there's 5 columns here. Not every student has to attempt this 5 times. Once they have their green for mastery, then they're done, but there are 5 here. You can also add assessments with this little plus sign if needed. So to record the scores, I hover over this column and look for Performance Grader. This opens up the assessment platform, which has our students on the left, the teacher page in the middle, which has materials, directions for the teacher, teacher prompts, and the scoring guide, and a place on the left to record the score. The scoring guide here says enter the number correct. So Clifford is highlighted, and let's pretend that Clifford had 3 correct. So I hit 3 and submit. Let's pretend that Matt had 1 correct, that Isaac was absent that day, and that Blaise had 0 correct. This performance grader opened in a different tab, so I'm going to go back up to the top of my browser and just click on the Mastery Connect tab again. And the scores have been recorded here. This is try 1 for this standard. If I navigate to this little box, it takes me back to the original top level tracker. And you can see that we have to do some reassessment and reteaching here with patterns. So let's pretend I've done that, and it's time to assess patterns again. So I'll click on, I'll just hover over pattern, go to assess. This time I'll go to try 2, and I'll make note that for try 2, I don't have to reassess Clifford again. I have to reassess Matt and Isaac and Blaise. So I hover and go to performance grader, and Matt has a 2 this time. Isaac has a 3, and Blaise has a 1. Back to the previous tab. Results are there, and when I go back to the original tracker with this selection, what I should see is the color from the most recent assessment. So Clifford should show up as green because his most recent one was green. Matt should be yellow because his most recent one is yellow. Isaac should be green, and Blaise should be red. And there they are. Let's pretend now that I've done some more reteaching with representations, and it's time to reassess representations, which were in this column. I only need to assess Matt and Isaac. So going here to assess. I've already done 2 tries with this one. So I'm at the 3rd attempt. And Matt now is a 3. Isaac is a 3. And going back to the original tracker, we can see now that everyone in the represent column is green, so I am done assessing represent. There are 2 standards that are assessed together. So I want to point out those gets a little bit different. Sums and differences over here are both assessed at the same time, and because of that, there's another column with a multi-standard assessment. That's what the gray columns are for, where it says multi-standard assessment. So when I want to assess sums and differences, instead of clicking assess here in the green column, I'll click on assess here in the gray column. And this time I go to this little orange menu to get the performance grader option. The only difference is that on the right now you see 2 criteria. Criteria 1 and Criteria 2. In the teacher pages, under Scoring Guide, it explains that Criteria 1 is for addition and Criteria 2 is for subtraction. So Clifford does well on addition and has a 1 on subtraction. Matt does well in addition, has a 0 on subtraction. Let's pretend Isaac is a 2-2 and Blaise is a 2-1. Here are the results from that one assessment. Back to the original tracker. And I see that they all did well with sums, but there's still some reassessment to do with differences. And I should say some reassessing following reteaching. There are two ways to do the reassessment here. One option is to go to this second try column and do another assessment. If I go this way, I really need to reassess both the addition and the subtraction. If I want to just reassess the subtraction, an easier way is to go back to this try 1, click Assess, and if I put my cursor right in this box, I can actually edit that score from the first assessment. So let's suppose that Clifford now is a 2, and Matt went up to a 1, and Blaise went up to a 2. Now by doing that, I get the most recent score, but I sort of lose the history that I would have otherwise. Looking back on the tracker, and there are the results for sums and differences. And that's an example of several examples of how to use the Performance Rater to capture the data for the kindergarten math assessments.